right, listeners, welcome to the Empowered Half Hour. We are here in 2025. I can't believe it. And I am with one of my brand builders group friends, Adam Kasix, and he specializes in helping people go really from like their worst, most traumatic state up into their full potential. His story is absolutely awesome. And I paused for a second because Adam, I was going to share a little bit, but I'd rather you share. So I'm just going to welcome you to the show. Welcome to the Empowered Half Hour.
Hey, I am very excited to be here. Thank you.
Yes. So I just want to dive into it. All right. Can we do that? Can we just go in?
There's toe dippers and there's divers, and I'm a diver.
Because I was reading your bio and stuff as we were preparing for this. And that's why I paused, because I wanted to share something witty, because you have like the one-liners we were talking about in the pre-setup. But I was like, you know what? I'm not even going to attempt it. I'm just going to let Adam do it. So tell us a little bit about your background. So you are really helping people on their personal transformation journey. And from what I gather, you have seen the darker side of things, and you have now seen the lighter side of things. And now that you have crossed that bridge, so to speak, it feels like, in what I've read, that you really feel a calling to help people transition, like cross that bridge too. Would that be fair?
It's fair, and yet even understated, because it's more of a conviction that will not let me go. And I teasingly refer to it as a blessing and a curse only because of that factor. It's not a choice for me.
Yeah, it's an obsession. I like, for me in my work, it's like I was like, oh, maybe I'll just, take a month off. There's no taking off. You just keep going. It's there when I go to sleep. It's there when I wake up in the morning. So I totally understand. But let's get into your backstory a little bit. How did you get to this point where you're so convicted to help others transform?
I like to say that I am a born dreamer that was raised blue collar. And that's because all the movies that we've ever seen about Thelma and Louise, and we hear the stories of Brad Pitt being born in middle America, Mississippi or Missouri, I think it was, and he takes the car out to California to go to become, to LA for the dreams. That whole idea, I was born as one of those people, one of those souls, but I was plucked right into the center of hard hat, busted knuckle, hard-working Detroit. And that's my family. That's my parents. I'm proud of what built. It's that attitude is never far away from my delivery, and also my heart, my passion. That's part of that diligence. But
yeah, and you have like a built-in grit when you're.
It is. There's no doubt. I was in the city until I was 4, in the city proper, and then I was in and out half the time. All my family was still there, even though we lived 6 miles outside the city limits until I graduated high school. So I know that world a little bit. My mom and dad, though, raised in it and raised me as such, and that leads to like what happens when that dreamer, that starry-eyed soul, is raised by hammers and nails, right?
Yeah.
Because that's how they knew to raise. And I don't necessarily mean physical abuse. I want to be clear on that. I did not have any of that as a kid. I got spanked a handful of times, but I don't consider it abuse. So when I look, I can see, okay, I go into nursing because they're like, hey, what do you want to do when you're 14, 15, 16? I'm like, dude, I want to play defense for the Detroit Red Wings. That's what I want to do. And they're like, yeah, but that doesn't work for our kind of people over here. So I need you to wake up and go get a real job. And so instead of playing like for the Detroit Red Wings hockey team, I'm over here slinging pizzas for their sponsorship of Little Caesars Pizza. Like, it was crazy, right? And some of that's in the book, and that's for down the road. But the bottom line was that I ended up going into nursing. I got really good. I was really good in school very easily. It was nothing for me to get A's. It was just because good memory, and I can attach real quick to what I hear. And so I went and did that. And within a couple of years, I found myself completely out of sorts, miserable, feeling a desperation that I was stuck in a place that I might die in. And it was the worst possible thing ever. But by that point, I had a wife and a child. And essentially what happened was I believed that I was checkmated by life. And so what did I do? I reverted back to some prior patterns of being promiscuous, especially from my days in the Army, when I had gone in the Army right after high school. And I know some of this feels hodgepodge, but the idea was that I was stuck in a place where I felt like I didn't belong, and I had no one around me to show me anything different about what was happening, and that I could change things. If I wanted to change things, that I could change things. Even that little simple idea was I had never heard anything like that before. So I fell into the sex, and then from there, as a nurse, I fell into the drugs to numb the betrayal of my wife and kid, who I loved dearly. And I was betraying everything about what I believed. And so that began the path of a 4-year spiral into IV drug addiction, losing my family, losing my 2 kids. By that point, And then shortly after that was things that turned around. But essentially, I wasted my 20s because of a really bad perception and no mindset help to show me anything different.
Damn.
So
I
I
just
end up in
want
that
to
spot.
share a little bit with you of my story because I think
Please.
that it's so wild that you're on the show because of the synchronicity, right? So my story is a little different, but there's this thread of the dreamer in it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so I had a really unique experience where I was born Midwest too, from Indiana, and my parents were full-time musicians when I was born. So I was born into the dream.
Yeah.
And
Hippies.
I got to see them play music and dance and sing and guitars and bonfires and bongos and just that expression of when someone's in aligned to who they truly are. And then freaking, I would say like that societal conditioning happened. They had 2 kids. They started abandoning their gigs and started playing less and less. And by the time I was in high school, college, they'd all about stopped playing music. And I had saw their depression set in stronger and stronger and stronger. And then they got addicted to prescription drugs. My mom passed away when she was 46. I'm 23. I was 23 at the time. And then my dad passed away when he was 62 and I was 35. So by the time I was 35, I lost both my parents. And it took a lot of reflection to get to the point that I'm at today. But in the awareness that I have today, I say that my parents died because of the disconnection from their dream, like not because of overdosing or withdrawing from pain medicine. It was from the disconnection of the dream. So I am identifying with what you're saying very, very deeply because it is part of why I can't sleep at night, why I'm so convicted to my message too, is because I feel that people need to be reminded that they have permission to dream. So I'm just going to give that back to you and we'll keep going.
This is a life or death situation.
It is.
I agree with you.
What I'm saying.
This isn't just about not belonging in a rat race or go and seeing traffic jams on the highway. My son and I, my youngest, is almost 13, so I'm calling him 13 because the year's ending, and it's easy when I'm telling people how old all 4 of my kids are.
Oh, you have 4 now too? Okay.
When I'm in the last quarter, I got 2 more birthdays to go with these kids, and it's like I'm just counting them all the next year. So I don't. Anyway, he's almost 13. He's in gymnastics 5 days a week. We go together, and I take him almost an hour south of us. So we're in Tampa Bay area, and we go to Sarasota. And we get down there, and on the way there, every day, he sees, we counted the miles, over 10 miles of gridlock on the northbound side from people leaving Sarasota and going back to the Tampa Bay area. And we have these conversations because I'm drilling in him the mindset of a dreamer that has his feet planted on the ground. Because for the long time, I was the dreamer, but my feet were still in the clouds, and it took therapy to help me figure out, we got to come down so we can do some things here.
1000%. I couldn't. You're like speaking words that I would use. So
I love it.
Love it.
So he sees that. And I told him, I said, not every one of those people is supposed to go out and shake the world up and do the dent in the universe thing and whatever, but every single one of them has something that they're built for. And I tell them, because these are the stats, right? Like the numbers say about 8 out of 10 people wouldn't go back to their job on Monday or the next day if all things being equal, money was handled and their family was secure. Like they wouldn't go back to the thing they do to get money from someone else. And so because of that, that's also a big drive. But that's what we mean about life and death, right? Like Benjamin Franklin a long time ago said, most men die at 25, but wait until 65 to be put in the ground.
Damn.
Henry David Thoreau said most men, and these are guys are from past generations, so they didn't say people or women. They just said men. They spoke in that first person masculine. So Henry David Thoreau, like different than Ben Franklin, different character. He was, Henry David Thoreau was like more fruity than me. Like he was out there, and that's why I love him.
And he's like out in nature, like.
Yes, yes. I'm like, if I didn't love family so much, I would be that guy. Just go out there to nature and just contemplate birds and leaves blowing. But he said, like, most of us live lives of quiet desperation. And your parents, it feels like, unfortunately, that, like, went down that road. We were in that road. So getting back there, I meet someone. And you know the Pursuit of Happiness movie with Will Smith?
Yes.
Okay, so there's that part when Chris Gardner's story, the real guy, he's out in front of the Wall Street Exchange, and he sees that young dude in the really expensive suit getting in the red Lamborghini. I think it was a Lamborghini. Maybe it might have been a Ferrari. But right there in the front of the building, and he comes up to him and says, he's all in his brown wool suit, not looking sexy whatsoever. But he had the guts to go up and say to the guy, 2 questions. He said, 2 questions for you. And the guy's like, yeah, what? He goes, what do you do and how do you do it? If I would have had that mindset at 20, 21, 22, 23, anywhere in there, mid 20s, I probably wouldn't have started shooting morphine in the mornings after work before going home to my toddler. Like maybe, but I'm not blaming anybody. This is my path. So I meet this guy named Don, and Don served as that guy with the Lamborghini, but it wasn't flash like that. It was just a guy that I could look to and say, wow, that. Like, I don't want to be him, but something like that. And so Don, long and short, he was my guy who helped me transform some things. And this is what I wanted to bring to some of your people today. And that is this concept. And it wasn't his idea either, but he taught it to me. And it's this concept of define, learn, and do. Have you heard that in those 3 words like that before?
I have not.
Good. Because to me, in my head, it's become so ingrained that I think everybody knows about it. But that goes to the delusion of our own perceptions. So,
but I'm going to pause you for just 1
please.
second because I want the listeners to pick that up. Define, learn, do, right?
That's it.
Okay,
When I speak at academies for kids that go down, I speak to as young right now on a public arena to as young as 10, 11 years old. So almost 6th grade if they're smart, right? 10 years old, but 6th grade. And so up through high school, and we're talking like I coach 50 and 60-year-olds as well in different capacities. So I say it's the same thing, but for the kids, I frame the conversation as who wants to know the formula for happiness? Because that's what Don taught me, the formula for happiness. For big, sexy people with big jobs, like we would say, like, this is the life fulfillment plan, right? Like, this is your recipe for wholehearted soul blossoming. It's all the above. You define clearly what you want, not what you need, what's got to pay the bills, what you need out of your desperation to get your rent paid. Oh, Lord, please help me meet the light bill this month. Like, that's so weak and powerless. It's not even funny. And it's a shame to who you were born to be. It's shaming that true intention that's inside you, right? So you define what you want, you get clear on that. In my program, my 3-step collapsible stuff, I have that first step is done by a tool that I call Radar. And we don't need to get into all the minutia of the teaching today, but it's a self-coaching, self-awareness accelerator. I needed a way that when I wasn't with my VA therapist after Afghanistan, learning about cognitive behavioral stuff and exposing myself to the shit that was scaring the hell out of me, that I was crying every time I'd go to write. Like, I needed her to tell me these things. But in that world, I couldn't always get to a therapist. And how many friends do we really trust when we're in a dark place that has the schools or the non-judgmentalness or the tools, the empathy even, the understanding to hear something when your stuff is way darker than anything they've touched? I tried that before and I freaked them out and they didn't come back around. Like, this is real friends. I had an anxiety attack around a guy that I was friends with for 15 years, and he said I couldn't come back around his restaurant anymore because it freaked people out. That was when I discovered paranoia for the first time. I had to define, right? And define Radar. Radar, I like to say that it helps you do all these things. You can be your own coach without another therapist, your neighbor's opinion, or smashing another beer for my veteran brothers and sisters, or anybody else. But that's some of the language we use. So we get from there, Radar helps get clarity on that. It helps stop the bleeding from my nursing days. It helps stop the bleeding and get stable. And then it helps us maximize the moment that we're in, maximize what we have going on instead of like, you ever like started getting ahead in your savings or your fitness, or maybe a relationship's going good and you're like 6 months down the road, something happens and you're like, something always comes up. If you're saving,
you got that saboteur pattern in you and you're like, bro, I did it again.
Yes. So radar, think blip, it's going to catch it all over time as we practice with iteration effects, right? So that's the second one.
Do you have that in your book, just out of curiosity? Or
all of the frameworks will be in the book that is not published yet. So, but they're all going to be in there.
That's why I was like, is it
everything? Yep. Everything that I ever mention will be a resource in the book for complete free download. I'll probably ask you for your email so I can keep in touch with you and throw you more crap like that, because people who are interested in these like me, we're not always the most proactive in going out to get more of those or asking the resource for more until we get comfortable, right? But anyway, that's step 1 out of the 3.
Love it. Love it. So let me ask you another question.
Like slow down a little bit. Yeah.
No. It's all fabulous. Okay. So we talked a little bit about your backstory, and we've also talked about in that there's been like the natural arc of what you've had to overcome. But I always like to help the listeners turn their setback into success. That's kind of one of my themes. So what would you say is one setback? Like if you had to like share with the listeners one setback or that you've turned into a success or a concept that you've learned from turning your setbacks to success. But I would love you to share something with the audience in that narrative of setback to success from your own life.
I appreciate the articulation. And because while you were doing that, the most natural synchronicitous segue, you handed to me. That literally is the step 2 that I can easily shape or tell you the story that fits it, because this next part was born out of the answer to that question.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And that's my combat experience with the Army. So I had 12 years when I left nursing. By the way, I had mentioned that I destroyed everything, right, with the wife, and that my 20s I used to basically destroy myself to like ground zero. Like, what is that volcano?
That devastation of the D's. It's like depression, divorce, debt, drugs,
Yeah.
disease,
Okay.
like everything.
Yep. So that culminated. But after I meet Don and I start defining and learning and doing, by the way, learning from someone who's been there, has the expertise, can help you. They have fruit on the tree, right? They're not just talking through theory. They know, they've been there, or they can get it. And then you go do what they're recommending. That was a define, learn, do piece. So the second part is literally the learning part. And I had to apply it. Never, believe it or not, what you're seeing today, by the grace of God and my faith, I'm telling you, like overcoming post-traumatic stress and getting back to a normalcy of function as a husband, a dad, a guy in my own skin, okay? Trying to just do his thing. Myself as an individual, nothing was as impactful as having to fight through and determine that I was going to thrive after that occurrence, after those experiences, more so than losing my wife and having a near-death experience from being an IV drug addict while a nurse. This was like this next tool, I call it revamp your vision. Because when I got out of the Army, I didn't know I had that experience at my buddy's restaurant, and then I wasn't invited back, but I had just gotten out of the Army 3 months earlier, and I had just gotten back from Afghanistan 9 months earlier. I got out right after I got back. So I never even did debriefing, psychological debriefing stuff.
There was no like integration back.
They let the rabid raccoon go right back out into the woods. They sent me right back out there. And anyway, I get home, and that 4th child that I told you about, we go to gymnastics. He's almost 13. He was born 30 hours after I got off the plane.
Oh my gosh.
So I get off the plane from combat. He's born. I'm back in Detroit. We're stationed in Kansas. I'm in Detroit with family on leave. And then we start life. I had 6 months more to get out of the Army. We did back and forth stuff. But then I get out, and then I come to this restaurant, and I'm like, oh, wow. I started feeling the first day I had an impending doom going on is what was going on. I didn't know that's what it was. I felt as though the whole world was ending, and I was like gripping the counter. You know, it was one of those moments. So he's like, dude, he called me that night. He's like, hey, you kind of freaked some people out. Can't have you back. And I'm like, oh, dang. Like, I didn't know what happened. So this went on for years. I meet this beautiful woman, Gloria. She was on her retirement stretch at the VA, and she was the first person to help me see some of this. But then I meet someone else down in Tampa, and they're like, hey, this is about 5-6 years ago. He goes, it was a Marine colonel. He goes, hey, when we go over there, what happens when we're fighting over there is that the terrorists, this is his words, they install demons in us. And then what we don't know is that we come back with them.
That's deep.
He goes, I said, okay. He goes, this is never going to change. You'll always have this. This is the way it is. Best we can do is learn some coping stuff and all this. And I let that sit for a little while. And then I realized I had already been a student of self-development. I had already been through all my mentorship with Don.
I can do this.
I go, you know what? I don't know. I don't want that. I'm the one that assigns meaning to the stuff that goes on in my life. I give it the meaning that it has. And the meaning then feeds everything else. So we'll get into it. But learning, what Don told me I had to do was learning. The learn step, this is our learning curve of you to your dreams. You today to the vision you might have. You're going to define what you want. There's your vision. But to go through and learn so you can you're doing along the way, but you're learning. This is the process of expanding our awareness, right? To learn things we knew. I saw you with your coach a year ago, and I saw the emotion in your introduction of the man. He made an impact because he helped you understand like probably some mindset things that made some clarity about how to stop all this sabotage and going backwards so much. Then you can start predicting success forward. It's like, holy crap. So Revamp Your Vision was born in my mornings of walking, healing, and after I had made my decision to not live with this, to not survive this. I disrespect the idea of surviving something unless that's all you have in that moment, because I've been in that phase. If you stay in survival mode in life, you've no longer decided you're not living anymore because you're just surviving.
I am so glad you said that because different paths, but I've had a lot of loss, and all that grieving and foundational loss can get you stuck in survival. And so I also chose to reject that. I was like,
Yeah.
this is not the life I want for myself. So, but there is something I read maybe just 2 or 3 days ago I just want to share because I feel like it's in alignment with what you're saying.
Yep.
But I'm 45 years old and it was written by someone else who is 45 coincidentally.
So
And
am I.
it says the average, so it
Yeah.
says the average lifespan is 80 years old and I only have 35 years left. And like, I'm tearing now. I'm like, that is powerful. And in the context of what you're saying for the listeners, like, regardless of how old you are, like, you only have this much time left, whether it's 10, 25, 35, 45 years, like, think about what life could look like. And so your
Yeah.
conversation's really like stirring that idea in my head of the what if and like
Yeah.
following that dream because we only have X amount of time left. So anyway, I just had to share that because I was
It's
like, I gotta
beautiful.
get this out. I gotta
It's
put
a
it down.
yeah, it's a beautiful complimentary note because I made that decision that I was going to thrive with this. So the Revamp Your Vision was born out of all that, like I said, and my writing and the journaling and figuring things out and talking to people and all the stuff. But out of that too was the fact that, like, okay, I'm not okay with just getting some VA disability for what went on in the form of dollars that lose value every day because of something called inflation. And that wasn't a political comment. That's a factual thing that I don't want to rest on X amount of money to come in and feed me at a certain level when I have this conviction that won't let me go. And I have to go out and do things and span this message of hope, right? And so it came up. I'm like, how can I do it? It became a 5-day challenge, but it wasn't really 5 days. It was just an hour every day at lunchtime. And so I call it now a 5-hour challenge that we can do in 5 minutes or an hour, but it gets you started, right? Because there's day 1 through 5. And it starts out with, like, you can't get to where you want to go unless you have a clear destination. Because was it Alice in Wonderland? It was the cat with Alice, like, which way do you want to go? And she didn't know. And he said, well, then anyway. Well, what did he say? Do you know the quote?
I don't know. I don't know the quote, but I
Yeah.
know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Then any way will do. If you don't have a direction, like, we all get
I
into
think that's
Google
actually
Maps.
what it was. Then any way will do, or something.
Yeah,
like
any
that.
way will do, because you got to get in your Maps app and give it the destination. If you're going to get there, you'd never do that aimlessly, but we do that with our life because it's just below our level of awareness.
Yeah,
But after
one
radar, it's
thing
not.
yeah, and there's one thing I just want to share with that, just to kind of like further embed this for the listeners, is
Yeah.
that especially when you start adulting, and whether you're coming out of a situation like where you're coming out of the army, or you've been in corporate America 10 years, or whatever it is, there's this conditioning that's happened that separated you from your dream, right? There's
You're getting ahead of me.
And there's this thing that's like happening in the conversation with Adam and I. If you're not picking it up, I want you to get it, is that you can pick your destination. It's not too late. This condition is truly just a condition, and you have the opportunity to change it. This is what we're talking about. There's this power of your mindset, and not just your mindset, but your faith. And whether that is a religious faith or a faith in yourself or a faith in just something bigger, the combination of your mindset and the potential and the possibility for it to come true will change your life and add back to you. Yeah, like,
That's the kind of real stuff that if somebody has ears to hear that, this literally, without being not an ounce of corny or cliche, could be the beginning of the rest of the life that your soul has been asking you to live, in the form of that little empty feeling of something more is needed here.
yes.
That's it. This could be that moment. And I love it. I love it. It can't happen, though, without getting clear on that defined picture. You have to have a definition of something else. And if there's something, oh, I don't know, follow that. It's begging you to come to it.
Somewhere. Yes.
It's begging to reveal itself to you, but it's going to make you earn it. It's going to make you earn it, because when you get to the other side where that life gets sweeter, Eric Thomas likes to call it that sweeter side, right? The other side of life, it's not just having more money than you know what to do with, or not having worries. I finally understand too that the bunch of money thing, like, that's a low level idea of freedom.
A long time ago,
It's
too,
a
and
low level
actually,
idea.
It's counterintuitive, because when you like follow your passions, you align with your passion, you align with fulfillment, you align with happiness, joy, deep connections in your life, success ends up being, and money ends up being, the result of alignment. It blew my mind when I learned that. And I was like,
Yep.
why do people not know this? Like, why are we
Yep.
chasing success and money? Because to your point, it's low level and it's not fulfilling and it can destroy people. But
Yep.
if you focus on the fullness of life, that is just a natural like outcome.
That's
And
it.
I know we are getting down to the bottom of the 30. And I want to ask you one more question because I want to wrap this up with a bow. How would this, like taking these concepts, empower the listener's life? Like give them a punch in the face. Not in the face, guys. I'm sorry. Just like the spiritual punch.
Then pause one quick second
No,
because I have the answer. Yeah.
So he's showing a hat for those that are watching. You'll see
I'll
it.
say
For
it.
those
Yeah,
that
yeah,
are
yeah.
listening, it says take the step.
So look, I'll even switch it until the end of our time for your
Love it.
listeners, right? Your watchers too. Because look, you get here by here.
Yes.
I did not plan that, I promise. That's good though. I might use it again.
Awesome.
You
No,
get here.
I love the hat change. It's very powerful.
You get here by there, right? So what stops a lot of, and I'll, since we are getting close, it's the part that I end a lot of challenges with when I do it either one-on-one or even in a group. And I know that your people are not intellectually disagreeing with us. Yeah, I know. Yeah, I got to take that step. How do you get into the light? One of the things that I say during the challenge is only by going into the depths of your own darkness can you find your light.
Absolutely true.
It's not my idea, right? Like it's this concept of the treasure you seek. The cave you fear to enter contains the treasure you seek.
I love that.
I don't know who that was.
High-fiving you.
Yeah. Boom.
It's true. You have to go
This
in.
is it. You got to go in. And the way
need to go in with like the intention of getting out. Because the other thing I see is like people go in and then they get stuck because it's dark and scary and they're like, I don't know how to get my way out.
No.
So, but like like Adam is saying, like keep your mindset strong. Know where your destination is, because if you go into the cave and your destination is clear, you're going to be able to turn all the lights on. You're going to be able to see your treasure and you're going to be able to walk out with that. So
look, if we're watching Wizard of Oz, the original, and we're looking from the Red Bull hot air balloon, getting ready to skydive from the atmosphere, what are we going to see Dorothy? She's on the yellow brick road. She starts. It's all exciting. The beginning of any new journey is beautiful and exciting. And you got the castle in your mind, the wizard's palace, right? Oz is in your mind. But from above, you can see with maturity because you have a higher level of awareness. When you look down, oh, dang, Dorothy's going to go through a dark forest of danger. But it's just a part of it. You guys, it's just a part of it.
Yes.
It's through the other side. You go through.
Only way out is through.
Only way out is through. If you don't take the step toward the through, which you can with someone like Becca in your corner, like you look, you're like, yeah, I can go through that. I went through basic training as a kid. I went through the nursing hard days and handled them horribly wrong, right? But you got to go through, because if you have something in your heart, look, there's other coaching things, like you got outlines for days, but the bottom line is the three structure of define, learn, and do. You got my own little tools that resonate are radar, revamp your vision, and the 7 pillars of revolutionary freedom. But what does all that do for you? Everybody's got any good coach worth their salt has a way for you to maximize where you are. That includes stopping bleeding and sabotage and you're hurting yourself. Maximize where you are. Then they have a plan to expand you and expand your skill set and get sharper in the skills you have. But then after that, it's time to evolve, because it's perfectly in sync with being created as a larva. I was a larva after Afghanistan. I had to maximize that opportunity and expand into that little caterpillar. And then that wasn't enough. What you're seeing now show up today is the evolution, and my butterfly wings are getting strong, because what do? You take the step. You have something in your heart that's calling you, something that's begging you for years. You listen to Becca you're probably trying to build up the incremental courage, compounding over time to take the step. Well, if my nutso self and her nutso self today combining for some fireworks doesn't get it, trust us, take the step.
That is like the perfect way to end too. And I feel like I should have you back for a part 2, because we're just like, it's getting on the surface. Well, Adam, thank you so much for being a guest on the Empowered Half Hour. I know this is a show that is going to inspire and have people take the step. I
would love to give some of the more practical tools like thought jacking. I have this measurement tool. I have a measurement tool that allows you to measure yourself on a 1,000-point scale without becoming obsessive about perfection, because you realize the process is perfection.
That's
right.
Awesome.
Anyway,
yeah,
but you got to take the step.
We'll have to do a round 2. But
Loving
Adam, thank you again.
All the best. Thank you.